welcome back to Cincinnati Zoo Tales. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Mark. Thanks to all you listeners for joining us for another episode. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. Jenna, we've got a lot of visitors today. I'm really excited for this episode.
We have 2 guests and a third co-host with us. Lily Maynard is here to help us talk about this really exciting initiative that we're hoping to involve the Cincinnati Zoo with.
Well, I couldn't help myself. I needed to come and join in and make sure that Jenna and Mark got to meet our visitors, Varun and Divya. From India, we have Dr. Varun Goswami and Dr. Divya Vasudev from the Conservation Initiatives organization. They are the co-founders and senior scientists there, and we're growing our partnership with them and just so thrilled to have them visiting us here in Cincinnati to get to know their work and for them to get to know us. So welcome, Varun and Divya.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
We really appreciate you guys coming to talk to us and all of the work that you do. And it's so hard. I'm always like, just tell us about yourselves, which is a very broad question. But if you guys don't mind just telling us a little bit about how you became passionate about this, or how you decided what to study for your PhDs, or just a little bit about yourselves in general.
Yeah. So I actually grew up in a city. But even having grown up in a city, I was always interested in the outdoors. And I especially like to watch primates. So we have a species of monkey over there called the bonnet macaque. And they are so mischievous. They're constantly running all over the place. They're constantly stealing people's food. And they're just always doing something. And it's extremely fascinating to watch them. But I hadn't translated that into a career in conservation science till I did my master's in wildlife biology and conservation from an institute in Bangalore, India. This was a very unique program which was completely taught by people who are very much involved in conservation in the field. And that really changed me. It influenced me a lot. There were very, very inspiring people whom I met, and I heard about a lot of the conservation challenges that wildlife is facing across the world, and especially in India, and I was hooked. I knew that this is what I was going to do.
I think that's amazing. I always wonder, for people that are actually out in the field doing these things, I know those jobs exist, but I've never known how to get into them. It never came across my career path or my education, so I think that's really neat and so important that there are people like you two that are doing this. And what about you?
Yeah, I guess, so I grew up in a smaller town than a city, and so there was always a lot of, nature and the outdoors around, and as growing up, we would always be out and enjoying all of that space. But also, my grandfather, he was in the tea gardens in the state of Assam, in the neighboring state, and so we'd go visit him in our winter vacations, and there's always some forest area near where he would be, and he'd take us to the forests, and he'd take us for picnics, and during those times he used to be really passionate about elephants himself, and he was an honorary wildlife warden, so then he would talk about all of that, which then kind of sowed the seeds for me being interested in wildlife. I didn't at that time think that I'd end up taking it up as a career, but it slowly started to evolve in that direction. And I eventually found myself in the same master's program as Divya did, which is in Bangalore. And actually, to be honest, there were very few opportunities to study. Wildlife biology and conservation is a non-traditional field in India.
Okay.
I mean, it's now changing, but it wasn't when we were trying to study it. And so this particular master's program was we were in the first batch, so the first cohort of students, which started in 2004, and so we both were part of that first cohort. And it provided an opportunity to study a subject that I had by that time had become I'd fallen in love with, and I was really passionate about. In fact, I remember a friend of mine asking once I joined this institute. It's called the National Center for Biological Sciences, and when I was pursuing my master's degree, a friend asked, "So have you found your Hogwarts?" And I was like, "Yes, I have."
Perfect.
Amazing. So what house are you in?
Gryffindor.
Perfect. So your grandfather introduced you to the tea estates and the elephants. Did you think you would always want to help save elephants?
Yeah, I always loved elephants. I saw them growing up, and I remember I have a very this distinct memory of sitting in my grandfather's balcony outside his house in the tea estate, and we would see elephants coming down the hill, and it so happens that that particular tea estate is in the landscape that I currently work in the Kaziranga Karbi Anglong landscape, and that particular tea estate is one of the tea estates that we actually engage with. Wow. And so I go there and I fondly see the same hill and the same scenery and the same view, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this when I was a child, and I remember seeing elephants then, and I always loved animals. I loved elephants as an animal. But when I first started out during my master's or just before that, I think I'd read a few of these books by like Jim Corbett and Kenneth Anderson, who'd written about their adventures with man-eating tigers and man-eating leopards, and they just would paint such a vivid story of how they would track this tiger that they finally took out, so that it really got me excited about like trying to study tigers. So I was initially interested in working on tigers, but then soon I realized that I think I like social animals that I can, observe and interact with more.
Field work would be so hard because sometimes you aren't seeing these animals.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you like to be able to see them, and elephants are a lot bigger.
Yeah, and elephants are so. I mean, they're so intelligent. They're so social, and there's just so much going on that it's a pleasure to just watch them and spend time with them.
And for those of us listening that haven't been to the Karbi Anglong Kaziranga landscape, what is the role of the tea estates, and are there elephants on tea estates or tea farms? How does it work?
So let me introduce everyone to the landscape that we're talking about. This is the Kaziranga Karbi Anglong landscape in Assam, which is located in northeast India. It's on the southern banks of what is called the Brahmaputra River. This is a huge river, the mighty Brahmaputra it's called. And the Kaziranga National Park is a very unique park. It's a floodplain ecosystem located at the banks of the park, which means that every once in a while, every year pretty much, when it rains during the rainy monsoon season, the Brahmaputra floods over and inundates a chunk of the park. So up to 90-95% of the park can actually be underwater. While this happens, and when the water recedes, it leaves behind extremely rich silt. So the park and the grass that grows after that just makes for an amazing feast for a bunch of herbivores that live over there. So you have a huge assemblage of herbivores, and you have very high densities of them as well. These herbivores obviously also support a very high density of carnivores, the main carnivore over there being tigers. South of Kaziranga and because of this flooding of the park, annually animals need to move out of the park as well. They have to move down south, away from the floods, and they do so towards the highlands of Karbi Anglong. Hence, it's the entire Kaziranga Karbi Anglong landscape. To reach the hills of Karbi Anglong, they need to navigate this very, very complex space where there are plantations. So there are tea plantations, there are tea estates. There's also a bustling highway. There are human habitations and so on. So
they have to cross the highway.
They have to cross the highway. Yeah.
Do people break for elephants?
During the flood season, people break for elephants.
Wow.
But during the monsoon season, when there's maximum movement, the department over there is also involved a lot in just slowing down the traffic. So there are dividers, there are patrols that go up and down. There's a fine if you speed. There are speed guns. So you have to slow down slow down a lot if you're going along that highway.
Wow. I know you both are working on a lot of different ways to mitigate like human-wildlife conflict, but for this specific topic, have they considered the over or under bridges that I've seen happening around the United States?
Yes, actually that is very much on the cards.
Okay.
So there's been a long discussion and debate on what's the best solution so this national highway is also a lifeline for all of the eastern regions of northeast India, and it's been traditionally been so. Since we have the Brahmaputra river, this highway basically is kind of goes alongside the river.
Okay.
So it connects very important cities and towns and all of that to the further east, and so in many ways it's a very important highway. And so how do you try and make sure that all the requirements of the highway being what it is are met, but at the same time you're able to enable the movement of animals to cross over to the Karbi Anglong Hills from Kaziranga. So initially there was some conversation about potentially thinking of alternative routes and seeing if there's some other way that you can connect to the same highway further up, and then do that. But eventually what the government has settled on is to have these overpasses, and they are going to be, so they've been sanctioned and they're going to start very soon. And there's going to be one overpass which is going to be about 19 kilometers, I think.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. So
wow, giant one.
Yeah. So the car's going to go over, and there's going to be space below for animals to.
So that's a big, 19 kilometers long bridge with
Yes.
space for wildlife underneath.
Yes.
Wow.
And there are going to be multiple such overpasses. This is the longest one, but the others will be shorter. But it's basically coinciding with where designated wildlife corridors already exist for animals to move between Kaziranga and Karbi Anglong.
So important.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys obviously work in such an important ecosystem, and clearly human-wildlife conflict is an issue over there. Was that part of the stimulus to get you guys to co-found your organization, Conservation Initiatives? Will you talk a little bit about where you got the idea and why you started it?
So we wanted to... there are two major biodiversity areas in India. One is in the southwest, the Western Ghats, and the other is in Northeast India. Northeast India Varun's from Northeast India, so I guess he should talk about it more. But Northeast India has relatively less opportunities for people to do work over there. There were more places that were unexplored, and there was a lot less knowledge about that location, and a lot less conservation efforts invested in there. So we wanted to have an organization that would promote good science, good conservation science, and also science-based conservation in the area, and create opportunities for people who are from the area to actually get into the field and to develop skills and opportunities which would be there in other parts of India but not so much in the Northeast. That was the main, I guess, motivation behind starting our organization. Essentially, we wanted to have a place where people push for novel, interesting, useful ideas, are very much based on the ground, and it would kind of borrow from global scientific development as well as be informed by what is the local context. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that we very strongly believe in conservation initiatives is the conservation that we kind of implement on ground. We believe that it should be participatory and it should be inclusive and bring the different communities who are like important stakeholders in the whole conservation effort that you're trying to put in place, for them to work closely with such people. And it becomes really important in particularly some of the states in Northeast India where we work, because basically, more than 90% of the forests in these states, in states like Nagaland and Meghalaya, these are two states, hill states in Northeast India, where more than 90% of the forests are owned and managed by local communities. So it's on community land, and it's a very different model of conservation compared to most of the other parts of India, wherein we have most of our protected lands, or most of our natural areas that are protected, are on government lands and that are managed by the government. So here is a very different kind of land management system, and it necessarily requires a model where you work very closely with local communities to achieve conservation, and it of course means that you have to find that balance between achieving conservation and also meeting the day-to-day livelihood needs of people, and that's something that we were motivated to contribute towards as well. And so being an organization that's started in Northeast India, based in Northeast India, and with a set of people who have a reasonable understanding of the the local nuances and sensibilities and sensitivities, I think it would just make it that much easier to try and implement a slightly different kind of conservation model. So that was part of the motivation as well. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we at Cincinnati Zoo are so excited to be getting to know you and working with you. We're committed to working and supporting the communities that coexist with animals, because we live on a planet that's full of people and wildlife, and we want to help both groups thrive. And so we want to learn from you and work with you, and we're gearing up to build the new habitat. Elephant Trek opens next year in 2024, and we will have both Asian elephants, a growing herd, and a huge habitat that's 5 times bigger than our current one for our herd, and also gibbons, which is another species that you will work on.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're both interested in elephants and gibbons, and I would love to hear more about the gibbon side of everything, but I wanted to point out, I think it's important for people to realize not only are elephants magical and you can see them and they're social and they're intelligent and they have so many things, but when you're protecting an animal as large as elephants that need all of this space, there are so many more animals other than elephants that are being affected, but when you're protecting the elephants, you're also helping protect these other animals. So is that part of the reason that you're also focusing on elephants?
Absolutely. I think that's the main reason why we focus on elephants, because I think you said it exactly. So once you think about elephants as a species that you want to concentrate your efforts on, when you try and achieve conservation for this species, you're achieving conservation at very large scales actually, and you're then having a lot of benefits that trickle down to other species as well. So I think that's one of the reasons, and the other is that I think because in a country like India where we have, so the species requires a lot of space, but the space that it uses is a heterogeneous space. So you have some protected areas, but then you have all of these other shared spaces that have agricultural lands and other kinds of land uses, and elephants use those spaces, move through those spaces, they interact very closely with people when they do so. So we are also interested in working on elephants because they have this close, various kinds of interactions with people, and we want to be able to achieve, conservation at those scales while making sure that the kinds of relationships that people and elephants share is one which is, kind of in sync with what has traditionally been the case, where there's been a lot of reverence and a lot of cultural tolerance for elephants and other such species in India. And we want to be able to kind of continue to support that kind of, thinking and motivation while ensuring that we also meet the requirements of a species that requires a lot of space and resources.
Yeah, I also sometimes feel that elephants exemplify our relationship with nature, where we love them and we have a lot of empathy for them and we're very fascinated by them. We feel joy when we see them, but also there is a lot of conflict in terms of sharing space, over shared resources, and we need to figure out how elephants and humans, or people and nature, can both thrive.
I feel like that's just a worldwide issue that we all need to try and figure out, or everyone around the world is trying to figure out, because of course you can say that you love tigers, you can say you love elephants, you can say you love lions, but if they're taking away your livelihood or potentially coming into a situation where they could put your family at risk, no matter how much you love animals, you're probably going to protect your family, and so it's like a balance that you have to figure out. And there are more people every day and less animals every day and less wildlife space, so it's definitely like a really tricky topic. But yeah, as the Cincinnati Zoo, we've definitely been trying to share that story and help with different...
And focus on what gives us hope when we find solutions and we find ways to hold up opportunities that would help reduce that conflict, where the needs, both needs can be met. So I'd love to ask you, Varun and Divya, what gives you hope? What's something a solution that you found that has helped to reduce conflict between people and wildlife?
Well, one of the things, and I can talk about what gives us hope, and then Varun can talk about a solution. One of the things that really gives us hope is that wherever we have gone and worked in India, specifically we work a lot in Northeast India. So wherever we've gone, we've spoken about conservation of elephants, we've spoken about conservation of other species, of forests. There's never been any need or to explain why we need to conserve these species. People know, people realize, and people want to conserve these animals. Even if there are farmers who have faced crop loss from elephants, they still have a desire to conserve elephants. They still believe that elephants have a right to persist on this earth. And as long as there are solutions that kind of mitigate their losses or their safety concerns, they are extremely happy to not just allow elephants and other wildlife to be on their land, but also in some ways there are some people who are very much involved and interested in participating in conservation and spearheading and pushing for conservation. That is just phenomenal. It's phenomenally motivating to go, for instance, to a village somewhere, and they have set aside part of their land just for the forest and just for the species to survive over there, and it's immensely inspiring.
Yeah, I think I can share a short anecdote which speaks to what Divya said also, in that in some of these surveys that I was doing a while ago during my PhD, and I was in the state of Meghalaya, and I was talking to a farmer who was telling me about how, during the months of July, August, when the jackfruits all ripe, elephants come and then they eat their jackfruit. And then so I was just talking to him, and he said, but I obviously thought, okay, so he's losing his jackfruit to elephants, so I wonder what he thinks about it. And he was like, but I have enough jackfruit, So if the elephants, I have so many jackfruit trees, and if the elephants have eaten some of it, it's been, something that didn't seem to bother him. So I think somewhere it is definitely inspiring to see that people who face various kinds of losses are still able to come to terms with them in such a gracious manner. And it also kind of made me think that as a researcher or a conservationist working in these kind of spaces and working with people who face these situations on a day-to-day basis, that somewhere it's also important to not suggest an idea of conflict where there isn't one. So I think that's really important, because we may not think like that, and we may just say, but you've lost all of this, isn't this a problem for you? Now, that's kind of, you definitely need solutions, and I will talk about solutions, and you need solutions because people are genuinely, people are facing losses and they are facing hardships, and those have to be mitigated, definitely. But then if their whole worldview is one that, okay, we are facing all of this, but then, it's not come to a stage where I don't want this species in my backyard anymore ever again, then one shouldn't go around trying to suggest that might be how they look at it,
Yeah, so you don't want to put that idea in their mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's something that we've been mindful of in the way we interact with people as well. It's important to hear what they have to say rather than put ideas into their heads. As far as solutions are concerned, I think. As far as solutions are concerned, I think what's been really good to see from our work is that so we've been working with a lot of tea estates in the area, in the Kaziranga landscape that we just talked about, and what we found is that this is a space that elephants and other wildlife are using a lot for their movement and their requirements as they cover ground in the landscape. And it can support, so it has a conservation role to play in terms of supporting that kind of movement need and all of that kind of requirement. And it's not as, susceptible to negative economic impacts, because elephants don't eat the tea plant. So it's not like if they go into a rice paddy field and then they eat the paddy, then there's a huge economic loss that people have faced. But in this case, that's not there. And we found that people were actually quite all right to have elephants using these spaces as long as their safety concerns could be met. And so one of the things that we tried out was to put these solar-powered streetlights. So the safety concerns were coming from accidental encounters with elephants, usually at night or early mornings near where people live. So what we did was we put out these, we installed these solar-powered streetlights and strategically placed them only where people live in the tea estates, and with the idea that elephants start associating the lights with people and start avoiding those areas, but still are able to move through the rest of the tea estate. So effectively we're creating dark corridors for elephants to move through, and at the same time avoiding people and avoiding a potential situation of conflict with people at a very local scale. So then they're able to still meet their requirements, and at the same time people feel safer. And I think ever since we've put those lights up, we've received a lot of very positive feedback from people saying that, yeah, the elephants are now, moving away from where we are. And I think we need a lot of creative solutions. This is just one. This is not a silver bullet or anything like that, but it's one step in the direction of thinking about, okay, how can we think differently? How can we think out of the box? How do we think creatively to find ways of achieving coexistence? Because I definitely think it's possible.
I love that, because a lot of people might not know, but elephants are really quiet when they want to be, and so I can imagine if it were completely dark, you didn't have streetlights, and you walked outside and suddenly there's a herd of elephants in front of you, it'd be really scary, and you'd probably be scared for your life or for your house or for your family. So it seems like, I'm sure it wasn't easy to do, but it seems like such a simple, we're going to install lights, add lights, and they're solar powered, and kind of deter the elephants, and also hopefully give people a better view if they are really close up, and make it a little less scary. So
yeah, and I was just talking about this a little while earlier, that once we put the lights, people, because they liked it so much that they saw that, oh yeah, the elephants were moving away from where they were, they're like, oh, you should put lights here and you should put lights there, and they wanted us to put lights everywhere in the tea estates. And then we had to explain to them that if we put lights everywhere, then the elephants are not going to differentiate the lights which are next to your homes versus the lights which are somewhere in the tea estate, where the tea is growing. So if they don't differentiate that, then they can still come to where you are, and this whole solution would not work. So it's really important that the elephants start associating the lights with you and avoid the areas where you are. And they got it, and then they really thought that this is a good solution for them. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so I know we've talked a lot about elephants, and I'm not familiar exactly with your projects with gibbons, but is that just a personal interest for you, Divya, or is there something specific you are working on with gibbons? Do they need special help?
I started, my first work on gibbons was for my PhD dissertation. I've always been interested in primates, and I wanted to look at how animals or primates with a different social system navigates the landscape. And this particular primate, so gibbons are monogamous, which means that they are like us. There's one adult male, there's one adult female, and there's just the young, which is very different from other primates which live in much larger groups. So I was interested to see how they move across the landscape. And as I started watching gibbons and learning more about gibbons are so cool, by the way. They swing from branch to branch, and that is so neat. They're like the trapeze artists of the forest. Yes. So once I started learning more about the conservation status of gibbons, they are a very endangered species. They're facing losses, population losses because of habitat loss, forest loss, and forest fragmentation. So much so that in the last few decades, experts basically guesstimate that we have lost up to 90% of the numbers of the animal.
Wow.
So in some of the forests, in some areas there's just very heavy forest loss. In some areas there's hunting of gibbons. So clearly it's important to put in efforts to conserve the species, and that's one of the things that we've been wanting to do for a while, and we've kind of started that work over the past couple of years. So there are over the past few years. So there are a couple of things that we are doing. One is to just increase information on where the gibbons are, what is it that's driving their loss, which can potentially give solutions to increase, for them to recolonize past habitat. The other thing that we're doing is to try and secure the forests where they are. So they are in these forests which are community managed. So these are village forests, community owned forests. And in some places, there is a grassroots effort to protect them and to protect their forests. So we are supporting that community-based conservation through various means and basically developing, basically we're using gibbons as a flagship.
Okay.
And they're a really good flagship species because they're just very fascinating. They have this loud call in the morning that just announces their presence, and
we have that here at the zoo.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, one of the best welcoming things in the morning.
It's fantastic alarm clock.
Definitely.
I was actually really curious about that because you've talked about, the human-wildlife conflict, and that's where we're trying to avoid any conflict between humans and coming across these wild animals. But a lot of animals are facing issues with deforestation, and that's something that I don't know how you as conservationists, you sort of like hinted at how you're helping just kind of secure what's left, but is there a way to stop deforestation? Are you working with the government to try and convince people to stop? Are you working with loggers? I truly am always just fascinated by people who are on the grounds, doing conservation, and the community part, I understand. I understand how you can educate people or you can help people become inspired or passionate about a really cool animal. But, what do you do to stop deforestation? I don't know if you two are doing something like that, but are you? And do you have any ideas of, is that... that's a big question. But, I just don't understand how you make such a big difference or stop something that could make such a big difference.
Well, I guess, so there's one aspect of it which is to do with the law, and that this is illegal to do. So logging, for example, in India, in all of these, many of these places, by law, you're not allowed to do it. So then if people are logging and then taking the timber and selling it, then that's an illegal act, and so then the government can enforce the law on such people.
That's so interesting, because I assumed that it was happening legally at least some of the time, because so much... do you guys have numbers on how much of the forest is being cut down on a daily basis, or...
Well, that's actually, I guess that's a little, we don't have exact numbers on that. Once in every so many years, once in 3 years, there is a survey that comes out where we talk about the state of India's forest. But one criticism that has come out of this particular report is that it conflates forests with some plantation areas.
Oh.
So you can have agroforests or forests or forest plantations, and essentially it would be clubbed under forest. So if you have forest that's taken over by or that's cut down and it gives way to certain types of plantations, then it still gets counted as the same thing. But there was an RTI. An RTI is a right to information. So it's an application that you provide to the government to get information that the government has. So there was an inquiry some time back regarding how much forest land is diverted towards non-forest purposes. And every day, I think the number is 135 hectares. I can't exactly remember it off the top of my head. But every day there is a certain amount of forest land that is diverted for non-forest
and
purposes.
that is legal, correct?
Because
Yes.
it's diverted
Okay.
through legal means.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about pressure from cooking fuel? When wood pressure on forests for the wood for that?
Yeah, so the diversion requires, different kind of engagement and the policy and government motivation as to, okay, this is what we prioritize over that, and that's how you try and secure it. But at a more a more local scale, I guess. So when we are working with these community managed forests and working with the communities who own and manage these forests, what we've found is that a lot of them, there's a very strong dependency on firewood for cooking, for warmth during the winters, and all of that. So, and it's an integral part of life. They're really dependent on this. So then the idea would not be to stop it entirely, but to say how do we try and make it more sustainable. Some of these places are so remote that you can't have so large parts of India we have LPG like gas connections for people to cook and things like that, but some of these areas are so remote that you wouldn't be able to get LPG cylinders to those places. So firewood becomes a really important part of life there. So in these places, what we've been trying to do is and we've done some experiments, and it's still early days, but what we're trying to do is essentially say that can we make this firewood usage, can we make it more efficient? So in that way, we at least try and reduce the per capita requirement for firewood, per year or whatever it is. So what we have been doing is that, and we've done some experiments to see how well it works, but we are basically providing these fuel efficient stoves that let you cook with much less firewood than you would require if you were cooking traditionally on an open kind of stove.
Just in a fire pit.
Yeah, in a fire pit, yeah. So that, we've just started this work, but so far, from our experiments, we do see that it's definitely a lot more efficient to the people so we took it to one of the villages we work with, and then we asked them to try it out and took their feedback as well. And they generally they liked the idea as well. And they saw that they were saving firewood. And the firewood it also means it means effort for them, right? Because they have to go to the forest and get the firewood. So then that makes it so much easier for them as well if you're using less firewood per meal that you're cooking. So it's been, I think, welcomed, and now a lot of people are saying that, this is something that they would like to sign up for as well. So we are rolling it out at a larger scale now, and we'll see how it goes. But hopefully if this is something that kind of does take off, then it should reduce the dependency on firewood to a reasonable extent, and that hopefully will then make things sustainable in terms of at least these community forests that we work with.
So I think Varun was gonna say earlier also that in some parts of these areas, the land is actually owned and managed by the communities themselves. So they can collectively take decisions on what land use to have on the land, and one of those land covers, I guess, one of those land uses is forest. So they can take a decision to keep some part of their land as forest. It's like the private forest here in the US. So part of working with the communities is increasing awareness, of course, but also figuring out ways by which there can be some incentive to set aside some land as forest. Tourism, for instance, could be one incentive. Things like, they source firewood, etc. from the forest. These forests are also watershed areas, so all of that is also incentives to conserve the forest. So I think the other part of the how do you stop deforestation is also to figure out these very direct links between forests and either to figure out or to forge direct links between the forests and people's well-being as well as livelihoods.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like seeing the kind of connections you're able to make from your grassroots efforts to kind of promote the buy-in from the public, right? And the fact that that's able to actually influence policy, that's not something that I think we see over here in the United States quite as much. That's really incredible and amazing that you guys are able to make those connections. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to know a little bit more. So your foundation is called Conservation Initiatives. How many people are on your team? How do you decide what to do each day? Like, where do you go? Like, I just don't know how you start. I think it's amazing. But is it just the two of you? Do you have a lot of people? How are you getting funding? And
we have about 28 people on our team.
Okay.
This involves like everybody. We have a few projects that are running, and basically those projects, and we try to keep our company our organization not very hierarchical, so everybody sort of knows everybody. Everybody knows there are different teams, and the teams know what each person is doing, and we try to keep the knowledge flow both top down as well as bottom up. So there's a lot of flexibility and decision making that people on the ground can take as well. So once we decide on we have projects, and those projects essentially have activities, and that determines what we do on a day-to-day
Well, yeah, I'd be like, do I wake up today and go to this neighborhood and talk to these people? Do I,
Yeah, there are also, I think, unique opportunities that come up. Sometimes there can be, well, now I can't think of an example, but there could, suddenly there's an elephant in a tea estate somewhere, and then we can go and, we keep it a little flexible that way, so that if we want to go and observe the elephant in the tea estate, we
what
can.
What about the bridge over the railway line?
Oh, yes, that is a good one. So sometime back we got a call from the department, an official from the forest department in a nearby forest. This is a very interesting forest. It's like a small forest of just 20 square kilometers, which is about 10 miles, I would like to say.
Yeah, good job.
10 square miles maybe. And there is a railway line that cuts directly across the forest. So it splits it into two, one larger part, one smaller part, which makes it very difficult for species like gibbons to cross over from one side to another. So they wanted to have a bridge, a canopy bridge that cuts across and links one forest to another. And they wanted our help with it. So obviously, this is a fantastic thing to do. So then obviously we were very keen. We looked up other such efforts where people have used rope bridges, or other structures to link a canopy gap, and found that something had been done. A rope bridge of sorts had been using mountaineering grade rope, had been constructed for the Hainan gibbon. So we used that same sort of formula, showed it to the department official, and he liked the idea as well. So we showed it to some engineers, and consulted with people who are interested in mountaineering, and got a small concept note out of it. Did a field visit as well with him. So that was sort of a unique opportunity where we could potentially help. And when those sort of opportunities come up, then we grab it with both hands.
I love it. And just for anyone listening that isn't familiar, obviously a railway going through a forest is difficult for animals to cross, just because there's trains or, there's something that could be dangerous for them to cross. But gibbons are primarily arboreal, so they're going to brachiate or swing, like you mentioned, through the trees, and coming down to the ground is very dangerous and uncomfortable for them, right? So not only would they have to cross the railroads, but they would have to
come
do something
down.
that isn't natural for them.
Yeah.
So having a bridge is really important for them.
I forgot to mention, sorry. So the railway line, it's not only just the space of the railway line, but the railways requires that there's some space on either side of it to be completely clear of any trees and any foliage. So it's a pretty big gap.
Yeah. So how many, did you end up making a bridge? And
it's in the works.
Okay.
As in, we weren't doing it. The department as well as the railways. So the forest department and the railways department were essentially going to do it. They wanted inputs from scientists. So we provided inputs. There was another scientific group that provided inputs as well, pretty much along the same lines that we did. And the proposal is now there with the government to hopefully it'll be done.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So important.
Yeah, and it's a really important, it's a little patch of forest, but it's really important for primates. It's got 7 species, I think, of primates all there. So it's almost like a lab for students who want to study primate behavior and foraging ecology. Eating what they eat and all of those kind of things. It's really an ideal place to go and study. So, I'm glad that we're able to help with the gibbons and other primates being able to cross between one side to the other side.
Yeah, fingers crossed it'll soon be actually installed.
Yes, and it's so important also because if they aren't able to cross, then there's not as much breeding that can happen in genetic diversity, and it can really cause a bottleneck with different species. So that's an issue you hear about with palm oil and things like that too, causing these gaps in forests. But before we kind of start to wrap up, we appreciate all of your time. Lily, what is your thought? What is the zoo hoping to do, and why are we involved?
Yeah, well, we're very inspired by the amazing work that they do at Conservation Initiatives, and we want to help tell their story and get to know them and make sure we are representing that story of the hard work happening for conserving elephants and gibbons on the ground in their wild landscapes here at our zoo in our new habitat that we're building an elephant track. So we can only do that when we get to know the people who really do that work. And so we'll be asking them for advice in our stories here and asking them, how can we help tell your stories? Because we want to be able to help more people learn about conservation initiatives. Also, I'm a nerd, but I want to work with them.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. And we want to share resources and support and have more and more of our zoo team support their team on the ground. And so I love nerding out about behavior change and how to get people to change their behavior to more positive behaviors that support coexisting with wildlife. And they have some interesting challenges with the elephant behavior and communities there. Mm-hmm. So we're going to work together and hopefully get some funding to test out some interesting solutions and problems to solve the problems that elephants and people getting into conflict face.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah. Can't wait to start.
Oh, yeah, me neither. I think we just move forward and we keep hoping somebody will fund us. It's too good not to do it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask one more question. Actually, I have two questions, but this is the main one. What can I do? You guys are doing a ton to help the world be a better place, help animals, help people and their safety and everything. So if you had one thing of advice, what would you say?
Well, one thing that I'd say is that there are a lot of grassroots, on-ground conservation movements happening across the world. So I would say pick your favorite species or pick your favorite area or just look around your neighborhood. There's likely an organization, a small-scale organization doing work on the ground, conserving an animal or an ecosystem. And something will click for you. You'll find something interesting and fascinating. Reach out to the organization, find out a little bit more about it, see if you can get involved, maybe volunteer with them, maybe donate to them, maybe just keep in touch and just see what they're doing. But I think it's really important for people across the world to connect and learn about sort of conservation efforts that are happening at small scales, but I guess it takes a lot of drops to make the ocean. A lot of these efforts hopefully are going to contribute to us having a nice greener world.
Absolutely. I love that. And so that kind of actually ties in perfectly to my other small last question. So you're saying get to know these other organizations, find out what's going on around you. So do you guys have social media? Is there a way people can learn more about you? Do you have anything you'd like to share as far as a website or Instagram or Facebook or anything like that?
Thanks for asking. We have a website. Yes, it's conservationinitiatives.org. On the website are links to our social media page. I guess are more active on Instagram than...
Yeah, but we have both
Twitter
Instagram and
page
Twitter
as well.
handles.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think they both have the same name.
It's just conservation initiatives on Instagram, but that's on our webpage too.
Okay.
So if people would like to know more about our work, then please feel free to go to the website, and our email address is there too, and you can just, as well as a contact form, you can just drop us a note and we'd be really happy to talk to more people about our work. We love talking about our animals and our landscapes. So, yeah.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question. You mentioned looking into all of this and possibly volunteering. Do you guys need or take volunteers? Are you at that point in your foundation or not yet? You're laughing maybe not yet. But and I'm not saying for me. Don't get me wrong. I would love to. But for anyone interested, is that something they is...
Sorry, Jenna's. She'll be there tomorrow.
Yes, I just invited myself. But
so some things that we do, we can take in volunteers. Some things that we do, we can potentially only take volunteers from India. And some things that we do only with our trained teams.
Sure.
So it's sort of like a division of activities that way. I guess.
No worries. So I didn't mean to put pressure on you. I was just curious. Thought I'd put it out there in case you needed volunteers. You never know.
No, but there's some things for which
yeah.
we could, like Divya said, that we could have international volunteers.
Yeah.
And we'd be happy to explore those possibilities. It's just that certain other things, would require the volunteer to also be an Indian citizen as per the laws of the country.
We might have listeners in India. I know we have some all over the world, so maybe they're listening too.
Then reach out to us. In any case, we love to talk to people who are also inspired to conserve, fellow conservationists. So, yeah, fellow enthusiasts. So please reach out.
Conservation's complicated, and we
Oh my
need
gosh,
a lot
yes.
of people contributing wherever they can and getting creative, which means we need people with all sorts of skill sets.
Absolutely.
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 Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for us to be working together, and thanks so much, Jenna and Mark, for this opportunity to tell some
We're
good
thankful
stories.
that we
Don't
were able
thank
to
us.
have you
Yeah.
guys as guests. So
Thank you. It was so much fun.
And we hope you had a
It
great
was.
visit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We will talk to you later.
Yeah, until next time, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening.